The Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss.
Hey, welcome to the Captain's Log Radio. I'm Captain Jonathan Moss, and with me today, this dude, let me tell you, Captain Bobby Woodard. This guy is a man's man, a good friend of mine, and I'm so stoked to have him on the show today. A little background, Captain Bobby and I both sit on the board for the Florida Guides Association. That's actually how Bobby and I met, was through the Florida Guides Association. Bobby, how are you, my friend? How are you doing?
Hey, man, couldn't be better. Appreciate the opportunity to be on air with you tonight, man.
Absolutely. Well, when I think of guys who are passionate about fishing, passionate about conservation, passionate about the state of Florida, on the top of that list, there's a few guys I think of in the top three. Captain Bobby Woodard is one of those. Bobby did a lot of work with the Yes on Two movement here in the state of Florida. If you remember, I had Captain Travis Thompson on the show. We were talking about Yes on Two. It did pass. Yes on Two was the right to hunt and fish in the state of Florida, and that did pass back in November. And Bobby was very, very vocal on social media, online, different meetings. It's unbelievable. I feel like, Bobby, you and I were constantly having the same battles with misinformation with people. And it's like, bro, like how many times I should just save my response and put it in like notes on my phone because I keep writing the same thing over and over. But bro, thank you so much for your heart and your passion. We couldn't have passed Yes on Two without you and your help. That was a tremendous win for the state of Florida.
Oh, it was huge, man. It was huge. Thank you for those kind words. I was truly honored to be part of it. I mean, from the very beginning when Travis called and said, "Hey, what do you think about this idea?" I mean, it was a no-brainer to get on board with, join forces with yourself and Travis and Dylan and the whole Guides Association, all of our other conservation partners throughout the state. It was truly a team effort, a huge team effort. I was proud and honored and humbled to be able to play a very small part. But no, dude, it was awesome. Huge win for the state. Absolutely. It's cool to be part of something bigger than yourself. I mean, that's the cool thing. Like to put it in perspective, it's bigger than any of us. It doesn't really benefit us now. But the benefit is going to come long after you and I are gone.
Yes.
Yes. To the next generation and the generation, in perpetuity, forever means literally forever, which is just awesome.
Yeah. Travis posted something on his Facebook. I think it's where I saw it a few weeks ago as we get into the new year. Tell me something about 2024. And he put, I got to change the state constitution.
Yeah, man.
And I thought, man, you did, bro. And that's pretty cool. And it was pretty cool to see everything that went down, and you mentioned it, it's really for the next generation. It's really for the generations to come. It's really for my kids and my grandkids and my great grandkids. We are fighting, and I don't mean that in a negative term. Sometimes it is a negative term. Sometimes it is a fight, but we are fighting and advocating for clean water, for healthy estuaries. I hear so many stories of the good old days. Man, I remember when all we used to catch were 40-inch snook, right? I don't want to tell my kids I remember all we used to catch. I want to create the good old days for my kids. I want those days to be better than our current days. And that takes a few things. It takes us really having the mindset of being conservation minded. It really has the focus of going to these meetings, as Travis says, being in the arena. Okay.
Present. Absolutely.
Being present. Yeah. And then number two is don't just think about it. Don't just talk about it. Act. Okay.
Right.
Act upon it. You got to go after it. You got to go and do it. And having a powwow on social media and griping and complaining isn't going to accomplish anything. You got to be there. You got to
You
be
know,
present.
you couldn't have said it better. And on the Amendment 2 topic, other than changing the state constitution and ensuring the right to fish and hunt, in perpetuity, the two coolest things that I took from it personally was the amazing people I met throughout, the process, that have now become not just, colleagues, but friends. And the fact that the different agencies and throughout the state and nation, really, truly, we all came together. I mean, that's I haven't really been in the conservation game very long, in comparison to, my time in hunting and fishing. But that's the first time that I personally have experienced everybody kind of joining forces and being on the same page, versus, one agency is for clean water, one agency is for fishing regulations, one agency is for, public land access. This was everybody coming in together and on the same team. And look what we accomplished by doing so. We changed the state constitution.
Yeah.
So moving forward, those relationships that have been formed throughout that process, it's like, okay, cool, we did that. Check. What's next? Like, where are we going next?
Yeah.
Let's just keep this ball rolling.
Yeah. Well, part of what we do with the Florida Guides Association is we're not just a group of anglers or guides and trying to have a page on the internet where you can have a listing. We have monthly meetings where we have representatives from all over the state, from the Keys to the Panhandle, up and down both coasts, representing those regions. We have regional directors, and those part of our job, if you will, where this is all volunteer, as we talk to, I'm gonna use political terms because it fits, our constituents, right? We talk to our fellow guides, our fellow anglers. We find out what's going on in our areas and what can we do as a guide association to help drive policy to really improve water, to fix regulations, to allow anglers to get out on the water and go fishing. And
Yeah,
then not
public
just
access.
and not just anglers. We have a hunting side to this as well. We have a director of hunting for the Florida Guides Association because there are hunting guides in the state of Florida. And so
Absolutely.
collectively, we have been able to write letters to city commissioners, to mayors, to political people, the governor's office, and advocated for change. And we have seen change because of these meetings, because of these letters. It's not just about a group of guys, and there's a few gals involved. It's not just a group of guides with the DES there at the end talking fishing and hunting. It's about making an impact for our fishing and hunting community in the state of Florida. So it's a privilege to be on that board with you, my friend, and to just do a lot of work behind the scenes to keep that passion that we have for the outdoors alive.
Oh, it's super cool, man. Super cool. Back at you. I appreciate all of your help and involvement. It's been super cool getting to know you, throughout the process. And just to touch on what you said, just for the folks listening, it is the Florida Guides Association, but I would venture to say at least 50%, if not more, of what we do on the policy side and advocacy side is actually for recreational anglers as well.
And
Because
you can
well,
become a member even
you
if you're
can,
not
you
a
can.
guide.
As a matter of fact, we have recreational angler memberships, but even without that, just as a fishing guide, we recognize that our clients are recreational anglers. They're not just some random. I mean, we do get first timers, but generally speaking, we have repeats. We have people who own their own boat.
Yeah.
So as a recreational angler, you're our client, but we on our guide boats follow the same recreational regulations that you would follow if you were going out fishing, with your next door neighbor. So when we're out there talking about closures or open seasons or slot limits or whatever, it's for the recreational anglers as well. It's not just for the guides. So just
Yeah.
want to kind of get that point out there, for your audience.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, we do all kinds of stuff with the association, and again, big part of it is really advocating for those who are using public land, public water, and man, we're not just doing it because it's our job. We lose regulations, we can't guide anymore. No, this is because we care about our estuaries, and taking people fishing and getting people on, just making memories. That's our passion. So yeah, dude,
Amen.
this segment is quickly coming to a close. We got a couple minutes left. Tell me, we've talked about advocating for people, being on different boards and political stuff, but that's not our full-time job. What is your full-time job, man? You're a full-time fishing guide.
Yeah,
Where can
man.
people go fishing with you?
Yeah, so I got in the Charlotte Harbor, Boca Grande area. Cut my teeth actually on a freshwater lake here in Polk County. But quickly got into saltwater flats fishing, the Tampa Bay area. Growing up in Polk County, that was kind of our go-to. Jet over there and hit the South Shore, Cockroach Bay, Ruskin area, Little Manatee River, all up and down that shore. And then it just kind of evolved, man. I was fortunate to find some success fairly early, just in my recreational angling, days. And I was like, oh wow, this is cool, this is fun, and really hooked me into it. And I was looking for that challenge. Not that it wasn't a challenge, but I was looking for big fish, big fighting, strong running. And so that led me into tarpon fishing. And tarpon was a challenge. Inshore fishing came fairly easy, to be honest with you. I was just blessed. But that tarpon, man, I fished, I don't know, a good 3 years maybe for tarpon before I finally actually boated one and landed one.
Wow.
And it just ignited a passion within me. I mean, I unfortunately can't travel the world and go marlin fishing. So tarpon is like the poor man's marlin, I mean, it's inshore, near shore, up in the beaches, the backwaters, the bays. You don't have to have a big sport fish boat. And it went from there. I took friends and friends of friends and neighbors and it's like, well, shoot, if I'm going to have to introduce myself to a stranger when he gets on my boat in the morning, maybe I should get my license and start guiding.
When we get back from this first break, we're going to talk more about Captain Bobby's fishing career, where he guides, and dive deeper into tarpon.
This is the Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss.
Welcome back to the Captain's Log Radio Show. Man, we got rudely interrupted by that break. Bobby, tell me more, man. You were telling me you were starting in Tampa Bay, in that area, doing the inshore stuff, but then it took you a couple years. You got focused in on tarpon, and it took you a couple years to land your first. And then once that happened, it was like, okay, that's it. This is my focus. This is my jam. This is the fish that I want to chase. I remember my first tarpon experience. I was in Sykes Creek on the Space Coast, so East Central Florida, in Merritt Island. Okay, so just due east of Orlando. Sykes Creek, it's between the Banana River and the Indian River. And I was in this little mangrove area, and I was with my dad, and I threw a mirror lure. And for a long time, that's all I wanted to throw was those hard mirror lures.
Yep.
Fishing mangroves, it's not, it can be nasty with those exposed hooks. So if I wasn't throwing that DOA swim bait, it was throwing that mirror lure, and I was throwing a mirror lure topwater. Because I love seeing that explosion, a trout or a snook coming out of the mangroves, blowing it up, man. I love that. I still love that. It doesn't get old. And I saw this tarpon roll. And I looked at my dad. I was like, bro, bro. And I couldn't even talk. And I threw that thing over there and boom, it exploded. floated on it. It was going bananas and jumping, and I didn't know anything about bowing to the king. And my lure went flying. The fish went the other way, and I was like, "Bob, did you see that? It was crazy." I couldn't even talk, man. And then I was like, "Well, that's it. I'm gonna do that as many times as I possibly can." And I think there's just something about that stupid fish, man. I have been late to the airport. I've almost missed flights. I've been late to friends' weddings. I have missed, don't tell I have certain friends. I hope they don't hear this. I have missed the weddings because I was too busy fishing and I got caught up in tarpon. I've gotten caught on in summer storms, got a group of tarpon in front of you and they're rolling and you're just zoned in like tunnel vision. You don't want to look at anything else. And the next thing you know, it's black behind you and it's thundering and lightning. You're like, holy crap, what was that? And you turn around and it's, oh man, we're gonna die. Like, this isn't good. Like, that's what these fish can do to you. And then there's days where it doesn't matter what you throw, they're eating it. Then there's days where it doesn't matter what you throw. They don't want nothing to do with you. They know who you are, they know your address, and they ain't gonna bite your lure because they're smart. There's just something
Bro,
about this fish.
when I do seminars, to your last point, I commonly tell folks tarpon will eat anything you throw at them or nothing that you throw at them. It
That's
just
it.
depends on the day.
Just depends on the day. And as a guide, most of what I'm doing is strictly artificial. And I'm chasing tarpon from 1 pound to 100 pounds
Right.
on my during the summertime. Um, some days you got it dialed, and people are looking at you like, bro, this guy's a magician. How does he have these fish figured out? And then the next day you show up with such confidence. You're like, bro, we're gonna crush them. I know where they're sitting. I know what they're eating. And then they don't want nothing to do with it.
Yep.
And
Yep. Just when you think you got them figured out. And that's what's cool. That's what keeps it challenging. If it became easy, then I'd move on to the next challenge. But it's there's enough confidence, enough success rate, but yet still enough of a challenge to keep it, to keep it going and just keep me fired up about it. And I love your story about your first tarpon, man. Like when you go back and edit this, I hope you pay attention to your story that you just told me, because that is the reason why I do what I do, man. Like to get that reaction from folks, it's just I would so much rather be the catalyst for somebody else catching them than for me to catch one myself. I still, I'll preseason, early season when we're going out scouting. Hey, are they here yet? Are they here yet? I'll land one or two, couple, whatever. It's cool. I get my fix for. But from that point forward, man, I don't touch the rod. I don't need to. I don't want to. Like I like being the catalyst for that story. Somebody else telling that story that you just told. I want to be the reason why somebody else tells it to somebody else.
I love that, man. Absolutely. Okay, so you said Boca Grande. That's where you do your guide service. That is, if you're not familiar with the state of Florida, Southwest Florida, that's like the jam for tarpon fishing. I mean, there's so many great places to tarpon fish in the state of Florida, but I think of Boca Grande. Remember the old PTTS tournaments, the
Oh,
professional
I tried to burn it from my memory, man.
Man, they used to show that on TV. Was it Joe Mercurio or something like
Yeah,
that? He had a
yeah.
deep voice and like Shelly or something, some lady in the water. The
Yeah.
way they would do this, like there'd be 100 boats in the water and be people on the beach and watching. There'd be people catching tarpon. It was nuts. But I think there was a lot of pros to it. It brought a lot of attention to the sport, which is kind of some can be a negative. But they were released, but I think a lot of tarpon management was learned from those tournaments. You're now no longer allowed to use a big lip gaff on these tournaments or on tarpon, excuse me. That's tournament series doesn't exist anymore. You're no longer allowed to bring the fish out of the water if they're over 40 pounds. And I want to say a lot of that was probably from these tournaments. But regardless of what people think about the tournaments, it was as a young angler, it was crazy to watch on TV, man. It was nuts.
I'll give you that. So it was very high ratings, very adrenaline packed, edited TV.
Yeah.
But as somebody who was there and part of it, um,
Did you fish it?
no, I did not. But I
Okay.
fished during it. I mean, we were out there. I was out there fun
Running
fishing
trips.
and running trips. During it. Um, it started off. Okay, but then it quickly evolved and it just grew. It just got out of hand, out of control. It just
Yeah.
snowballed. It was innocent, innocent enough when it started, but it just snowballed, man. And a bunch of my friends to this day fished it and fished it. Some of even the top teams and top guides, and I would say to their face that I'm glad it's gone. It just is what it is. But it is another chapter in the long, long, long book, long history of the Boca Grande area. And that's what's cool about that area to me. It's not just the tarpon fishing. That whole area is so historic. I mean, that the town of Boca Grande, the island, Gasparilla Island, just Rockefeller, DuPont, Flagler, Ford, the Bush family. I mean, just names of the families that built this country. Have all at one time or still do own property there and have come there and vacationed there and fished there, and then even predating that, I mean, the Calusa Indians and like it's just so rich in history and it's beautiful too.
Yeah.
I mean,
Beautiful.
the water and the land and I mean, it's just dude, it's paradise for me.
Yeah, that area, I have such a love for Southwest Florida. You've probably heard me say several times, Sanibel Island, right there in the Southwest Florida area. That's one of my favorite places in the state of Florida. What got you there? Was it to chase the tarpon? Because you said you started in Tampa Bay. What got you down to Boca Grande?
So, do you remember the old days of the Florida Sportsman Forum online back in the day?
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, so we had a really cool group here in Polk County, Lakeland specifically, and there was probably 15, 20 of us or so. We all joined up and would go down to the Everglades camping, in the backcountry, up and fishing and boaters, non-boaters, all that kind of fun stuff. Well, this one guy, my first time meeting him was 15 miles in the backcountry of the Everglades. He was teamed up with a buddy whose dog puked in the tent the night before. So the next night, I was like, well, come sleep in my tent. It's just me. I got plenty of room. So he's sleeping in my tent. We wake up, a cold front just came out of nowhere, right? Nobody was prepared for it. Like the only cold gear anybody had was like their foul weather gear in the boat, right? So I wake up in the middle of the night and homeboy who I just met the day before is like shivering. So because his sleeping bag had dog puke all over it. So I unzipped my sleeping bag, tossed it over him, and like shared my sleeping bag with him to help keep him warm, right? So the next day he's like, dude, thank you so much, thank you so much. We get talking. He's like, you're a fish ever have. It's all in town, it's on me. Tarpon season, I'll take you down, I'll show you what's going on, blah, blah, blah. So we became great friends. He took me down and kind of was my mentor. Kind of taught me the ropes down there because he used to guide down there. And I just fell in love with the place, man. Like as you said, if you're gonna tarpon fish and you're in Florida, I mean, why not go to Boca, right? So
Absolutely.
that was, I think I'm coming up on my 23rd season. I think will be this coming season of pretty
Wow.
much exclusively fishing the Boca Grande Charlotte Harbor area.
That's awesome, man. And
So
you
yeah,
have
crazy story. So a dog puking in the tent.
that's pretty disgusting and pretty hilarious all of a sudden. Hey, but God works in mysterious ways. So if it took a dog throwing up in a tent to get you set up with tarpon fishing in Broken Grand, man, that's amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty cool to think back on that.
Yeah, I tell you,
And we're still friends today. So the guy's name is Scott.
heck yeah,
So
man.
we're
That's
still good
awesome.
friends to this day.
I've made some good friends camping down there in the Everglades, chasing fish. It's just amazing what happens when you get a group of guys together around a campfire and a bunch of tents, all focused on going fishing. It is just things happen. You become friends with people you never thought you'd become friends with, and next thing you know, it's all revolving around fishing. But hey, listen, we are coming up on our next
It's
break.
magical.
It is totally magical. When we get back, we're going to talk more about fishing and we're going to talk more in depth about techniques for catching tarpon in Boca Grande. I'm Captain Jonathan Moss. We will be right back.
This is the Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss.
Welcome back to the Captain's Log Radio Show. I got Captain Bobby Woodard with me today, and we are talking on this segment. We're going to dive deeper into tarpon fishing. Bobby likes to focus where he does his guide services down in the Boca Grande area, Southwest Florida. It is it is so much history when it comes to tarpon fishing in the state of Florida, there in Boca Grande. But let's talk details, okay? What is your go-to if we're doing uh, rod size, reel size, lures, bait? Tell me how do you catch tarpon in your area?
Sure. So I'll start with kind of my plan A, and then we'll dive into a couple backup plans from there. So it's no secret anybody that's ever fished with me or that even knows me knows that my plan A is always going to be the pass, Boca Grande Pass. For the simple fact of that's the mecca. I mean, the more fish to see your bait, no matter what species you're fishing for, the more fish to see your bait, the higher your likelihood of getting bit.
Yeah,
Right? It's a numbers
yeah.
game. So why go somewhere where there's a daisy chain or a pot of 10 fish when I can go somewhere where there's 10,000 fish? you know.
Yeah.
So we'll start there. We'll start there. That's not saying we're gonna that's exclusively what we're doing. But so for pass fishing, I'm a little bit old school. I prefer a conventional setup, and I actually build my own rods. I use really long. Yes, something like that, a round reel. Something not a little bit higher gear ratio than that one. But yes,
Little
same concept
Penn
there.
Pier, number 309, level one. Bro, this thing has caught some fish, but it is old. I got this when I was a
Yeah,
kid. Yeah, anyways.
that's probably what my dad used back in the '70s, tarpon fishing in Boca Grande.
Love it.
Um,
Love it.
but anyway, so I build my own rods. I use really long. They're actually 9-foot rods, fiberglass blanks, super slow action, so they bend real
Oh,
deep into the blank. Spooled up with 80-pound braid, and I actually do mark them with red and green yarn for depth. That way, it's basically it's tarpon fishing for dummies. Like the little yellow book at Books a Million or whatever.
yeah.
Tarpon fishing for dummies. You don't have to guess where your bait is. You just let your line out to whatever color yarn I tell you to. Watch it come off the reel.
So
So
you
as
you
I'm driving
cut
the boat, we're drifting along doing a power drift.
do you cut like
I'm
little
sorry.
strips? You cut like little strips of the yarn and tie that on?
Yeah. Little strips of yarn, put it on a
Oh,
needle, and literally like thread it into the braid, and just tie it in a knot, and it stays right there in the braid. And you can reel it
oh,
up through your guides, onto your reel, whatever. It doesn't affect how the rod or the reel performs at all.
oh,
And it's basically it's just metered depth fishing. Because there's the topography of the bottom of the pass. There's certain ledges and holes, and then it comes up and plateaus and flattens out,
yeah.
and then it'll drop back again. So I'm constantly watching my sonar as we're basically power drifting, along, and then going with the tide, setting up tide of where the fish are at, not cutting into the drift, nice orderly fashion, like kind of like leapfrog. You go up to the front of the line, kind of deploy your baits, And then I'll say, red on tip, green on reel, whatever, depending upon how deep we are, or depending upon not necessarily depth also, but where the fish are staged at
Where you're
in the
marking them
water
on your
column as
unit.
well.
Yeah.
So that correct. So in that way we can pinpoint where that bait is in the water column to where the fish are at. So we're not drifting that bait over their heads. We're not drifting that bait under their bellies. We're drifting it right where we need to be, in order for it to get bit. So it's really cool. It's really,
Let's
really controlled, easy style fishing.
Let me pause you there. So what you mentioned, what
Sure.
you had said about the drift, the way I have been taught, and I have fished Charlotte Harbor, but I have not fished the pass. So you get
We're
your
gonna change
boats.
that.
Yeah, we do. We've been talking about too long. You get your boats in line and you drift out, and everyone fishes. When you get to the end of the drift, you fire up and you get back in line and you go down the drift. Is that how it works still? That's what I've been told how it goes?
Yeah, pretty much. Although we don't shut our motor off, so your motor is constantly on because that way you're not dead boat drifting. You're in control of your boat because
Okay,
as the
understood.
captain of the boat, this is one of the key nuances. Yeah, one of the key nuances of fishing for tarpon and Boca Grande Pass, in my opinion, is really knowing your boat, knowing how it drifts, and knowing how your baits are going to drift. In what the wind's doing that day, what the tide's doing that day, where the eddies are, because you're basically controlling your boat to try to drift at the same speed and direction that your baits are drifting. You don't want your baits
Understood.
going under the boat. You don't want your baits
Right,
getting
right.
way out back behind the boat. You're trying to control so you're vertical fishing straight up and down,
Hmm.
and a natural speed of what that bait would be going through the pass if it didn't have a hook in it or didn't have a sinker on it. You match the hatch, make it look natural. So, and then pretty much from there, yeah, like you said, if you get a bite, you fight your fish, you put maximum pressure on them, try to break them out of that school of fish because you don't want to fight your fish right in the middle of the drift of boat, the pack of boats, where everybody else is drifting. The courtesy is that they reel up their lines and get out of your way. Okay, cool. That's great when everybody does that and everybody works together. But at the same time, you're going to be that dude out there that's under tackled or under dragged and just letting that fish drag you right through everybody. No, water. This isn't like we're flats fishing in 4 feet of water and you can lighten up your tackle a little bit. This is deep water, heavy current, lots of boat traffic, lots of sharks. So it's the right thing to do is to tackle up, drag, have those drags tight, and try to break that fish out to the side away from everybody and fight him out there. And land them as quickly, even once you do break them away, land them as quickly as possible for multiple reasons. But it's not good for the fish. It's not good for the angler. You don't want the sharks to come in on that fish. And me, a little bit of an ego thing. I want us to land our fish as quickly as possible because the faster we land it, the faster we go back and drop another bait in the water and have a chance of
Yeah,
hooking another one.
yeah.
So I don't like those big, long, drawn out fights. To be completely honest with you, with the tackle that we use and the techniques we use and then how I drive the boat while we're fighting the fish, even with first time rookie clients on adult sized tarpon, in that 100, 115 pound class, our average fight time is like 10 minutes, bro. Like from
Wow.
from from hook from hook up to leader, our average fight time is about 10 minutes. We have had them in a minute and 30 seconds before.
Wow.
Minute and
Wow,
30
dude.
seconds. About
That's
about a 75 about a 75 80 pounder. A minute and 30 seconds.
that's not something you hear of often. That's breaking the fish, but that's here's you mentioned there's a couple reasons why it's important to show up with the right gear. Number one, that water's hot. There's less dissolved oxygen in that water. You are going to put a hurting on those fish. So you got to get them
Yep.
to the boat so you can get them revived and back in the water swimming without fighting. Every minute that you're fighting that fish with undersized tackle is another minute that closer that fish is going to die. Okay, because
Yes.
it's literally fighting for its life. I've had it happen. It's not fun where you're fishing for bull reds and a tarpon group of tarpon comes by and you get bit and you're undergunned. You're on the wrong side. Yeah,
Uh-oh.
and you can fight those fish, but unless you break that fish off, if you try to get that fish to the boat and you fight that fish too long, because that water's so hot, it's going to die. Okay.
Yeah,
Number two, there's sharks. There are sharks in the water, especially there. Okay. I don't really have the shark problem here. We'll get bull sharks in the river, like in April and May, but they're not like these hammerheads that you guys got down there. And if you are exhausting this fish, even if it swims away, okay, you had a longer fight and you revived it and it swam away. Awesome. But it's still so weak that it's going to become food to these sharks. It is
absolutely.
literally a sitting duck. So breaking that fish is breaking that fish where you get them in the boat quick and then reviving it gives it a better chance to swim away and to make it.
Absolutely. And Jonathan, you mentioned the shark. You mentioned the sharks. If I'm lying, I'm dying. In 23 years of tarpon fishing in Boca Grande Pass, my boat, we've had one tarpon get eaten by a shark while it was on our line. Now,
Wow.
what
Only
happens after
one.
after we release them? Only one. After we release them, they go head down into the current. They dive down deep. What happens deep? I don't know. Okay, I'm not saying I'm not naive enough to think that there hasn't been some post-release mortality. There's been no surface post-release mortality that I've seen, but we've had one tarpon in 23 years getting because of the tackle that we use and because of how we fight them. Any video that my clients take on the boat, you constantly hear me chirping in the background. Hey, pull this way, pull that way, change the angle, do this, do that. And if they're not listening, I use the boat to fight the fish. I can't tell you how many times I've actually put my boat in reverse and backed away from the fish just to give it extra pull or drive around up current or change the angle with the boat. Now we're pulling sideways. We're not fighting it straight at 12 o'clock. All kinds of put the boat sideways in the current so the fish is having to pull the drag and the boat sideways through the current. There's all kinds of different things you can do, to help the angler fight that fish faster. And over the years, I've heard actual guides, and I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus here, but I've heard guides actually say, "Well, the longer we fight them, it's less fish I have to go hook." I'm like, "Come on, man! Like, that's just not the way I operate, man. Like,
Right.
again, I don't know if it's my former athlete, coming out of me, and it's an ego thing, but yeah, I I'm not happy. Like I put more pressure on myself than the client puts on me.
We're here to
Like
put fish in the boat. We're here to put fish in the
yeah,
boat.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like we, dude, let's go. Let's get another one. Let's go. Let's get another one. Oh, you want to drink the water? Okay, hurry up and drink it. Let's go get another one. Like let's go. So I don't know. That's kind of why we've kind of developed that system over the years, and it works. It works. We get them the boat quick and let them go.
Okay, I
So that's
love that
plan
you
one.
are.
Plan two.
Well, before we go into plan two, because
Go
we're
ahead.
running out of time for this segment, but let's recap real quick. Conventional reel, 80
Sure.
pound braid, 80-pound leader, I think is what you talked about for your
Yeah,
fluoro,
80-pound leader.
and a 9-foot homemade slow action rod. I love it, dude. I love it. Hey, listen, we are quickly coming up to our next break. When we get back, we're going to continue this conversation on how to catch tarpon in Boca Grande Pass in Southwest Florida. Captain Jonathan Moss, I got Captain Bobby Woodard with me today. We'll be right back.
This is the Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss.
Hey, this is Captain Jonathan Moss, and this is the Captain's Log Radio Show. I got Captain Bobby Woodard with me today. It's our last segment. We are talking tarpon fishing, Boca Grande Pass. Right before the break, we talked about rod and reel size. Bobby's favorite is to go a conventional, newer than this one, I know, Bobby, but a conventional style reel with a 9-foot rod. He actually builds these rods. For me, I'm using a spinning rod. Typically, it's an 8-foot TFO, tactical inshore, extra heavy or extra heavy, depending on where we're fishing. An 8,000. This is an Osprey, Florida Fishing Products Osprey 8,000 reel. Again, I'll go as low as a 6,000. Depends on where I'm at. Depends on water depth. Depends on just a lot of different conditions. But anywhere between in that 6,000, 8,000 reel size for the spinning gear. But Bob was talking about breaking those fish, getting them to the boat, getting them revived, getting them released, so we can go out and catch another one. And I absolutely love that. Absolutely. Better for the fish. Let's get it going. Moving on, though. Okay. Tell me about baits. What are you thinking baits? Tell me about hooks. Let's continue this progression.
Yeah, sure. So the tackle you just mentioned is perfect. It doesn't have to be a conventional rod. That was my plan A. My plan B is a spinning rod in case we're not in the pass, in case we're out on the beach, up in the harbor, down in Pine Island Sound, in a situation in which we're going to be casting to the fish versus just dropping the bait straight down like we do in the pass.
Understood.
So
Yeah.
so the size tackle you just mentioned is exactly what I use as well. So in baits range from crabs primarily. Threadfin herring is a close second. If I'm beach fishing, I love like a good hand-sized pinfish underneath a cork. So as we all know, pinfish want to go for the bottom.
Yep.
All right, they're going to be constantly digging. That cork's not going to let them. So what's it doing? It's putting out those stress vibrations. If you can get that cork, lead that school of fish on the beach, ahead of time, so that pinfish and that cork's not plopping down right in front of them or on their head. Get it out there, get anchored up, or spot locked or whatever, or drift, and get that bait presented so they swim into it, and it's their idea to eat versus you trying to feed them.
Yes.
Dude, a pinfish under a cork on the beach is probably my favorite.
Let's say that again, because that is the key for tarpon. I'm serious. That is the key. Some fish you can create a reaction by, you can twitch a lure, but tarpon, if they don't think about it, if it's not their idea, they're not going to do it. Like sometimes the idea is just slurp it in, and they keep
Yep.
on swimming.
Yeah, they don't even stop. They just slurp as they go.
And if it's any more than that, a lot of times they don't want it. Now, I've seen tarpon chase flies. I've seen tarpon blow up on plugs and chase a lure. But when it's an easy reaction,
Yep.
your chances are improve. Go through the numbers.
Absolutely.
Hook up ratio goes up through the roof. So that's a key thing right there. Having that stressed bait with the float up on top, genius. Yes, very good. I do that on this side.
So I love that. For live baits, that's pretty much. I will fish squirrel fish as well. I fish the traditional squirrel fish in the past as well. So
I've never heard a single person say that before.
Really?
Yep, I've heard it for bottom fishing for grouper and big snappers. I've never heard of a person using squirrel fish for tarpon.
Oh yeah, dude, it's tarpon candy down there, man. Tarpon candy. So those are the live or / natural baits. The crabs, the squirrel fish, the thread fins, and the pinfish. And then in crabs, I use both blue crabs and pass crabs. It just kind of depends on what's available. On the big moons, I really like the pass crabs because that's mainly, especially the last couple of years, we're seeing a huge decline in the blue crabs, which that's a whole other episode for us to talk about. But the pass crabs is mainly what's flowing through there. And to keep in mind, we're just dropping them. We're dropping them to the bottom, similar to like bottom fishing for grouper. It's got a heavy weight, and we're just dropping them to the bottom. So there's no casting involved. If I'm having to cast crabs up on the hill or out on the beach or somewhere else with a spinning rod, I like the blue crabs. Typically, they're a little bit bigger, a little bit heavier. You can cast them farther, and they're hardier. You can get multiple casts out of them versus those kind of more tender pass crabs that tend to kind of give out a little bit sooner.
Are you keeping the blue crab whole?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
When I say blue crab, I'm talking like 2 to 3 fingers, maybe 4 fingers max.
Okay.
across the
Okay.
back of the shell from point to point.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
and and
Because
four fingers would be like extra large. Like I would rather fish for tarpon. I would rather fish a crab that most people would think is too small versus a crab that's too big
yes.
because
Okay.
the elephants do eat peanuts.
Right. Right. No. So here we get a big blue crab. We're chunking them in half, and we're using that to catch bull reds or black drum. Yeah. That's I like that using the smaller ones, and they're probably a whole lot easier to cast a smaller blue crab than a big old giant one, anyways.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Tell me
So
about hook selection.
yeah, so hook selection on pretty much all those baits, it'll range depending upon the size of the bait. My standard go to is a 5/0. And 5/0, 6/0 is kind of the two main ones. But there you go, right there. In my tarpon box, I keep from 3/0 all the way up to 7/0. So if I'm fishing like a smaller white bait, like a smaller pilchard, then I'll downsize to like a 3/0 or a 4/0. If I'm fishing a bigger threadfin or even sometimes a mullet, a chunk of a catfish, dead bait on the bottom, then I'll go larger to that, 7/0, 8/0, sometimes, up in that range.
Hmm.
Generally speaking, 80-pound leader, unless the water's super, super, super clear and we're out on the beach, I will downsize to 60 sometimes if I have to. But I prefer 80. If I'm dead bait fishing, typically it's going to be up in the harbor where that water is a little bit more tannic. So I can get by with heavier tackle. I'll bump it up to 100 even on the leader.
Okay,
It just
so
kind of depends. So it's situation specific.
if you're not familiar, if you've never caught a tarpon before, if you've never been fishing for focusing on these fish, okay. If you're focused on bass, okay, think about you get your bass thumb from the aggressive mouth that a bass has, feels like 80 grit sandpaper. Tarpon are that on steroids, okay? And you're not gonna just lip one with one hand, okay? You're gonna with your thumb, excuse me. You're gonna grab that fish with both of your hands, put your hands in its bottom jaw and its mouth, and it will tear you up. It is very,
Absolutely.
very, very abrasive. That's why we're going with 80-pound, really thick leader, because especially that fluorocarbon has more abrasion resistance. It's going to hold up against that 80 grit, nasty, rough mouth that these tarpon have. Um, and he's saying if he's in the tannic water, he bumps up to 100 pound because that water is dark. That water is dirty. Even if it's tannic, tannic could be like tea. Tea is clear. If you get a glass of sweet tea, it's clear. It's just dark. And when it's
Right.
dark, those fish can't see that line. If fish are getting leader shy, then and he said if it's clear, then you bump down to like 60. It's important to have it's a fine game, especially with clear water. It's very it's you if it's too big, they aren't going to eat it. They're going to get really line shy. They're going to see that leader and get, oh, there's a line right there, and they're going to figure it out. That doesn't look natural. So then you got to lower your leader size to where you're getting the bite. But then you got to play the fish differently because the line is lighter. It's a game. It is a game, but it's a fun game. Figuring that out and fine tuning things is a lot of fun. Do you ever throw artificials at these tarpon?
Great question. Absolutely. So, late season up in the harbor, which actually I believe you filmed a show 2 seasons ago, maybe I believe it was
with
throwing bait busters up there.
with Ryan
Yeah,
Clace, yeah.
yeah, man. So I love throwing bait busters. That right there, purple demon. There's a good one.
Yep.
So I like the silver glitter black back. I like the root beer gold flake. I like the pearl side with the green back and the red underneath the chin.
No, I don't have that one.
I mean, all those are good. I don't know that the color matters a whole heck of a lot. I mean, I guess it depends on the day. It depends on the mood the fish are in. But when I'm doing that, when we're troll motoring around and throwing, ooh,
I
when
love
I'm
throwing top water. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I like top water as well. I don't do it much, especially with clients. I'm a really big anti-treble hook with clients kind of guy.
Get that, dude. I
Um,
get that, man.
so and with tarpon as well, because they do break off sometimes. I don't like leaving multiple hooks
Hardware.
in a
Yeah.
mouth that could possibly pin the mouth shut for a whatever period of time and until those hooks rust out. But however, though, up in the harbor, when we're sight casting, the artificials off the bow, I tend to, if we have live bait available, always at least have one or two baits out the back of the boat, maybe one suspended and then one on a cork, one free line and one on a cork, and just let them sit, just let them do their thing as we're troll motoring around, fishing the pods. You'll get cobia that way. You'll get some Spanish mackerel that way, some kingfish, late season kingfish to push up in there, and then of course your tarpon as well.
Interesting.
So and then out on the beach, I like artificials as well. Sometimes the bait busters work good out there as well, and the hoagies, dude. The hoagie eel is a great tarpon artificial bait. The bubble gum, believe it or not, the pink bubble gum,
Pink. The pink. Yeah.
the pearl white and the black. I mean, just the
Are
three
you
standard colors.
are you rigging that with with a circle hook through the nose?
No, with the light, I think they call it like the barbarian jig head or whatever that hoagie jig head is.
Okay.
And it's like I want to say it's like 3/8 maybe.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to go fishing in Boca Grande, you want to chase tarpon, Captain Bobby Woodard, clearly the dude is a wealth of knowledge. Reach out to him. I'll have all of his information on the description of the show. Bobby, thank you so much for being here, man. It was an absolute blast having you. Can't wait to go fishing with you. We've been talking about it for way too long. This is the Captain's Log Radio Show. I'm Captain Jonathan Moss, and we will see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss.